Part 1, Prologue. The silence before the storm. The earth was still in the dawn of its years. The breath of creation still lingered in the valleys, and the rivers carried echoes of Eden, whispers of a garden long shut by flame. Humanity walked upon the soil of promise, yet their hearts had already begun to turn away from the Creator's voice. There was silence, not the silence of peace, but the silence before the storm. In the heavens, the eyes of God looked upon the sons and daughters of Adam. The beauty he had once declared very good now reflected rebellion. Violence filled the earth. Greed built towers higher than mountains. The song of creation, once in harmony, had turned into a dirge of corruption. Yet amid this growing darkness, one light still flickered. His name was Noah, a man of integrity in a world collapsing into decay. He was not perfect, but his heart still sought to walk with God. The ancient rabbis said his footsteps echoed those of Adam in the cool of the day, not in Eden's garden, but in the wilderness of accursed earth. And in the stillness of night, when thunder rumbled in the distance, Noah heard the voice of the Eternal. The end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence. Make for yourself an ark of gopher wood. The words were both command and revelation, judgment and mercy intertwined. The ark was more than a vessel of wood. It was a prophecy carved into timber, a shadow of future salvation. For in every plank there was the whisper of grace, that even in wrath God remembers mercy. As Noah raised his eyes to the stars, perhaps he wondered, why me? Why now? But faith does not require full understanding, only obedience. And obedience in the eyes of heaven is the first miracle. Thus began one of the greatest mysteries ever written into time. The divine mystery of the ark, where wood, water, and covenant would reveal the eternal heart of God. Part 2. The world before the flood. A generation of shadows. The world before the flood was not silent. It roared with human ambition. Cities of stone rose from the plains, their gates crowned with bronze. The children of men called themselves gods, shaping idols from the dust that had once been their breath. They were a generation drunk on their own power. The strong devoured the weak. Kings declared themselves immortal. And in the fields where Cain's descendants had once built their altars, blood once again touched the ground. The scripture says, "Every imagination of the thoughts of man's heart was only evil continually." It was not merely that people sinned, it was that sin had become the air they breathed. They had forgotten Eden. They had forgotten the voice that once walked among them. They remembered only their hunger for dominion, pleasure, and fame. The sons of heaven and the daughters of men. The ancient world was filled with mysteries now lost to time. In the twilight of that age, giants, the Nephilim, walked the earth, born of forbidden unions between the sons of God and the daughters of men. Their power was unmatched, their arrogance without limit. They became kings, warriors, and tyrants, shaping the early mythologies that would echo through human memory as gods and demigods. But heaven saw the corruption of flesh and spirit. The divine order had been broken, and the balance between heaven and earth was fading. Creation itself groaned beneath the weight of rebellion. The earth was corrupt in God's sight and filled with violence. The soil that once bore fruit now soaked in innocent blood. The rivers that once mirrored the heavens now carried the reflection of death, Noah's eyes. Amid this chaos stood one man, not with a sword, but with eyes that still sought heaven. Noah watched as his neighbors laughed at the old tales of God. He heard the songs of revelry echo through the valleys at night, songs that mocked righteousness, that celebrated defiance. And yet, even as his heart grieved, he did not curse them. Instead, he prayed. Noah knew the God of Adam and Seth. He still built altars of stone. He still offered the firstborn of his flock in thanksgiving, While others worshipped idols carved in silver and gold, Noah's prayers rose like incense to the Invisible One. When lightning crossed the sky, the world rejoiced in its beauty, but Noah trembled, for he heard something the rest could not: the sorrow of God, the sorrow of heaven. In the courts of eternity, judgment stirred. For the first time since creation, Scripture records the grief of God himself. The Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and his heart was filled with pain. Genesis 6:6. Pause on that. The heart of God felt pain. The Creator, who once breathed life into dust, now mourned the very breath he gave. This is no distant deity of myth. This is a father watching his children destroy themselves. And though his justice must act, his mercy still pleads. Before the flood waters would rise, there would be warning. A century of grace, a voice in the wilderness, a builder of wood and faith. The last sunset of the old world. As the sun fell over the ancient hills, Noah stood on a ridge and looked down upon the cities below. The fires of human pride glimmered like stars against the darkening earth. He could hear the laughter, the echo of songs and feasts. And he wondered, would any of them believe if he told them what was coming? The Spirit whispered within him, quiet but unyielding, build the ark. The command was not only about wood or pitch or cubits. It was an act of defiance against despair, an act of faith against logic, an act of love against a world that had forgotten love. From that moment, Noah's days would no longer belong to the earth. They would belong to eternity. Part 3, the calling of Noah, the voice in the wind. There are moments in history when the wind itself seems to carry a message. For Noah, that wind came not as a storm, but as a whisper, a voice that shook both heaven and his soul. One night, as the last embers of his altar burned low, Noah lifted his eyes toward the constellations. The stars shimmered with unnatural brilliance, and in their silent geometry, he felt a pattern, a warning. Then came the voice. Not through thunder, not through flame, but through stillness. Noah, the voice said, the end of all flesh has come before me. The earth is filled with violence. Behold, I will destroy it. But you have found favor in my eyes. For a long moment, Noah did not move. The words were too heavy for air, too sacred for language. The world he knew, the soil he tilled, the family he loved, was about to be washed away. And yet, beneath the fear, there was something else. A trembling peace. He fell to his knees. Lord, he whispered, I am but dust and breath. Why speak to me? And heaven answered, not with thunder, but with design. The blueprint of salvation. In the stillness that followed, the Spirit began to reveal to Noah a vision of the ark. Not merely as a structure, but as a mystery woven between judgment and grace. Make for yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in it, and cover it inside and out with pitch. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, the width 50, and the height 30. Each measurement was divine, every cubit a heartbeat of mercy, every beam a testimony that salvation would come not through strength, but through obedience. Noah wrote down the words. He could not yet see the storm, but he could feel it breathing beyond the horizon. The ark would have 3 decks, like the 3 heavens, or the threefold nature of man, body, soul, and spirit. It would be sealed inside and out, just as salvation would one day seal the heart from both sin and death. And it would have one door, one entrance through which all who entered would live. That door would become a prophecy, a shadow of the door who would one day say, I am the way, the truth, and the life, the voice and the burden. When morning came, Noah told his wife and sons what he had heard. Their eyes widened, not in disbelief, but in the silent awe of those who feel destiny draw near. Shem spoke first. "Father, the people will call you mad." Noah smiled softly. "Then let me be mad for God." Ham asked, "What will we say when they ask why?" And Noah replied, "We will tell them that judgment comes, but mercy stands open." So they began, cutting wood, measuring, hammering. Each strike of the mallet was a sermon. Each plank laid upon another was a prayer. The sound echoed through the valleys like a warning bell, yet few listened. The world laughed. They called Noah the builder of doom, the old fool of the hills. But Noah did not answer with words, he answered with persistence. The faith that builds. Faith is not born in a moment of inspiration. It is built piece by piece through obedience. For 120 years, Noah built what the world mocked. He aged beneath the sun, yet his hands did not falter. His beard grew white, but his resolve remained young. Children were born, grew up and died, yet the ark still stood unfinished. The world forgot his warning, but heaven never forgot his faith. There were nights when Noah wept alone, the hammer falling from his tired hands. He would look to the stars and whisper, "Lord, will they ever believe?" And perhaps, in the rustle of leaves or the distant roll of thunder, God answered, "It is not for them to believe, but for you to obey." The foreshadowing of Christ. Though Noah could not have known it, everything he built pointed toward a greater mystery. The ark was not only a rescue from water, it was a prophecy of the cross. The wood, cut from living trees, would one day become the symbol of redemption. The pitch, sealing the ark from judgment, foreshadowed the blood that would seal humanity from wrath. The single door through which all salvation entered prefigured the Christ, the only way to the Father. Noah's hammer was the echo of eternity preparing for Calvary. The voice in the wind. One evening, as the last beam was set in place, a strange stillness filled the air. The birds grew quiet. The air thickened with unseen electricity. Noah looked up and saw clouds gathering far beyond the mountains, clouds darker than any he had ever seen. Then he heard it again, the voice in the wind. "It is time." And for the first time, Noah truly understood that the ark was not a structure. It was a promise, a covenant of mercy floating above judgment, a bridge between what was and what was to come. He turned to his sons. They finished the door. The hour of rain approaches. And as they sealed it shut, the wind howled like a choir of angels mourning the world's last dawn. In part 4, the blueprint of salvation, building the ark. The ark stood like a question carved into the earth, massive, silent, and impossible. Its rising shape became a sermon without words, a monument to faith in an age of disbelief. Each day the sound of hammers echoed across the valley. Each night the stars looked down upon a half-built vessel destined to carry the future of the world. And Noah, now grey and weary, worked with a patience that only eternity could understand. The measure of faith. When God gave the design of the ark, he gave no blueprint of the flood. Noah was told how to build, but not when the rain would fall. He was asked to prepare for a storm he had never seen, to build a ship without an ocean, to believe in salvation before judgment began. That was the first miracle of the ark. Faith before evidence. Faith that hammered wood while the skies were clear. Faith that built a door before a single drop of rain had touched the ground. By faith Noah, being warned by God about things not yet seen, in reverent fear built an ark to save his household. Hebrews 11:7. The labor of the righteous. Day by day, Noah and his sons shaped the gopher wood, their hands rough and blistered. Animals wandered near, drawn by a mystery they did not understand. And though the valley was filled with mockery, heaven recorded every strike of Noah's hammer. Neighbors came to watch, curious, then amused, then cruel. They laughed as Noah spoke of the coming flood, and they spread stories through the land. The old man has lost his mind. He builds a boat in the desert. But Noah did not answer their laughter. Each insult became another nail of obedience, each sneer another testimony of endurance. The ark grew taller, broader, its form like a mountain made of wood. From a distance, it looked like an altar awaiting sacrifice, and in truth, it was. For in every act of obedience, Noah was offering his years, his strength, his reputation, a living sacrifice to the unseen God. The symbol of the 3 decks. As the structure rose, Noah remembered the divine command. Make it with lower, second, and third decks. To many, this was merely practical, but room for beasts and birds. But to heaven, it was symbolic. The lower deck, the realm of the flesh, the place of beasts, the mortality of man. The middle deck, the realm of the soul, where family, memory, and hope dwell. The upper deck, the realm of the spirit, open to the light, closest to heaven. Thus, the ark became a reflection of humanity itself, a sanctuary containing body, soul, and spirit under one covenant of wood and faith. The pitch within and without Noah covered the ark inside and out with pitch, a dark, tar-like substance that sealed the wood from the floodwaters. In Hebrew, this word kofar shares its root with atonement, kippur. To cover the ark was to atone for it, to protect it from wrath. Even in this detail, God was revealing a mystery, that salvation would always come through covering, not by the worth of the vessel, but by the mercy of the seal. This was no accident of language. The pitch foreshadowed the blood that would one day cover sin, not on wood that floated, but on wood that stood upon a hill. The mockery of men years past. Children who once mocked Noah grew old enough to die. Generations were born and buried, and still the ark stood unfinished, a monument of patience amid the laughter of the world. Merchants passed by and mocked. What rain? The sky has always been kind. Poets wrote songs about the mad builder of the East. Priests of false gods warned their followers not to listen to the dreamer of storms. But Noah pressed on. He had seen what others refused to see, not with eyes, but with faith. His gaze was not fixed on the clouds, but on the covenant. And slowly, the ark neared completion. When at last it was done, it rose above the landscape like a second mountain, a silent altar of wood waiting for the first drop of divine judgment. The divine inspection. The day came when Noah stepped back and looked upon the finished ark. He had spent a century of his life upon it. It was vast beyond measure, its beams like ribs of a great living creature. The door stood open, facing east, toward the dawn. Then the wind rose. The same voice that had called him decades earlier now spoke again, low and powerful as thunder through the hills. Noah, the time has come. Gather the living. My covenant is upon you. And in that moment, the air changed. Birds that had sung in the trees grew silent. Beasts lifted their heads and began to move, 2 by 2 as if guided by invisible hands. Lions walked beside lambs, eagles descended beside doves. Predator and prey obeyed the same unseen command. Even the wind seemed to kneel before the coming rain. The foreshadowing of the church. The ark was not just a vessel of escape, it was a prophecy of the church. One door, one salvation, one covenant, one grace. As the ark stood ready, its shadow stretched across the ground like a cross. In its wood was hidden the future pattern of redemption, the gathering of all who believe into one body, sealed by divine mercy, lifted above the waters of wrath. And Noah, standing before the door, felt both sorrow and peace. He knew that soon the laughter outside would turn to cries, and yet, within this wooden womb of faith, life would begin again. He looked up at the heavens. The air was heavy. The wind was waiting. "Lord," he whispered, "your will be done." And heaven remained silent, but the silence was full of purpose. Part 5: The mockery of men and the patience of God. The ark stood complete, vast, silent, and strange. It loomed over the valley like a monument to madness. To the people of Noah's time, it was the ultimate absurdity. A ship with no sea, a warning with no storm. And yet, for heaven, it was the final call to repentance. A century of mercy had been offered, and the hands of God still hesitated over the floodgates of judgment. The laughter of the lost. At first, they came to watch. Men from the nearby cities brought their children to see the crazy old builder. Merchants joked that they would sell Noah's wood when the dream failed. Poets sang mocking songs under the rising hull of the ark. "Tell us, Noah, where is this rain of yours? Perhaps your God has fallen asleep." And the crowds roared with laughter. They danced around the ark as if it were a stage for mockery. Some even carved idols in its image, naming them the God of Rain. Others wagered silver coins on how many years until Noah would give up. But Noah did not answer. His silence became heavier than their laughter. Each time he looked at them, his eyes carried tears instead of anger. For he knew the very mouths that mocked him would soon cry out for mercy. He had no desire for vengeance, only sorrow. He was a prophet who preached through patience. The long-suffering of heaven. The scriptures later say, "The Lord is not slow in keeping his promise, as some understand slowness. He is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance." 2 Peter 3:9. This patience, divine, relentless, heartbreaking, hovered over the earth like a veil. Each sunrise was a reprieve. Each sunset was an unspoken warning. For 120 years, judgment waited. Every heartbeat of mankind was a chance to turn back, but none did. The sound of revelry filled the earth. The descendants of Cain continued to build towers and temples to themselves. The Nephilim still ruled by violence, and in the midst of their glory, they laughed at the idea of rain. Noah's final sermon. Then one day Noah felt it, a shift in the wind. The air grew still, heavy, almost watchful. He gathered his family before the ark and spoke to them as the people looked on. "The time of mercy is ending," he said. "The heavens are silent, but not asleep. For 120 years we have built, prayed, and waited. If they would only believe, they could still be saved." His voice trembled, not from fear, but from grief. He turned toward the crowd, faces familiar from decades of scorn. "Come," he said. "The door is open. The ark is not mine. It is yours. Come before it is too late." But the people only laughed harder. They threw stones at the wooden hull. Some mocked him by pretending to weep, others by building miniature arks from clay and burning them in the fire. Still, Noah did not curse them. He bowed his head and prayed, "Lord, forgive them. They know not what they do." Even in judgment, grace still lingered. A divine delay. For 7 more days, the sky remained clear. Noah and his family waited within the ark, the animals restless, the silence unbearable. Outside, the world celebrated its victory over prophecy. They feasted. They sang. Children played at the door of the ark, throwing mud at its walls. And then, on the 7th day, something changed. The light dimmed, though the sun was still visible. Birds stopped singing. The air itself seemed to bow before an unseen presence. Then, in the farthest corner of the horizon, a single drop of rain fell. It struck the dust, sizzling like fire upon stone. Then another, and another. The heavens began to weep. The first tears of God rain had never touched the earth before that day. Dew had risen from the ground to water the soil, but now the tears came from above. It was as if heaven itself was mourning what must be done. Each drop was not merely water, the sorrow of a creator, watching his creation collapse under its own sin. People looked up, confused, then uneasy. The laughter died. Thunder rolled, not a distant echo, but a roar that shook the bones of the mountains. Then the fountains of the deep burst open. Water surged from beneath the earth as though it had waited since creation for this command. And somewhere within the storm, a voice spoke, not in words but in finality, enough. The sealed door inside the ark. Noah and his family trembled. Outside, the rain turned to rivers. The people who had mocked now screamed for the door to open. They beat upon its wooden sides with their fists, crying out Noah's name. "Open to us! We believe you now! Let us in!" But the door was no longer Noah's to open. It was God himself who had sealed it. For mercy has a time, and justice has a day. Noah fell to his knees as the cries grew fainter. He wept, not for himself, but for the world. He had preached mercy until mercy became silence. And outside, the laughter of men was drowned by the wrath of waters. The patience of God revealed. In the flood, judgment came swiftly. But in the centuries before it, mercy had waited patiently. This is the mystery often forgotten. The flood was not proof of a cruel God, but of a patient one whose love refused to let sin go unanswered. For if evil were never judged, love would never be holy, and if wrath never came, grace would never be precious. The ark was both a refuge and a warning, a shadow of another vessel of salvation yet to come, where wood would again bear the weight of judgment, and mercy would again be sealed by blood.
Subscribe now to watch more videos about mystery.
Part 6. The first drop of rain. The seventh day dawned with a silence that felt unnatural. The valley lay still. No laughter, no bird song, no whisper of wind. Even the beasts in the ark were quiet, as if creation itself was holding its breath. Then came the sound, a soft, distant note, like the sigh of heaven. A single drop fell from the clouds, landing upon the dust. It shimmered, pure and small, and yet it carried the weight of judgment. Noah looked up from within the ark. Outside, the sky was no longer blue. It was bruised with shades of grey and gold. Lightning flashed across the horizon, not as a streak, but as a curtain of light. The storm had begun, the unraveling of creation. In the beginning, God had separated the waters above from the waters below. Now those same waters were being reunited, as if creation itself was reversing its own birth. The fountains of the deep burst open with violent power. Oceans rose from beneath the soil. Rivers overflowed their banks, swallowing the plains. Thunder roared like the voice of angels crying judgment. Mountains trembled. And the rain did not stop. It was as if heaven had opened its heart, and from that heart poured both sorrow and justice. The world in panic. At first, the people had laughed. Then, they doubted. But now, they screamed. They fled toward the high places, clinging to trees, rooftops, and cliffs that quickly disappeared beneath the rising tide. Families huddled together, their cries drowned by the roar of the waters. Temples crumbled, idols fell, swept away like dust. The laughter that had mocked Noah's faith was now replaced by the echo of despair. The ground that had once been their pride now betrayed them, for even the mountains bowed beneath the waves. And amid the chaos, there was one great wooden shadow, the ark, rising with the waters, its sealed door gleaming with divine protection. Inside, the flicker of lanterns glowed like stars in a sea of darkness. The ark rises. The first waves struck hard. The ark creaked, groaned, and shuddered as the waters lifted it from the earth. Noah's family held onto the beams as animals roared in fear. Outside, the sound was indescribable, a mix of thunder, wind, and thousands of voices crying out to heaven. Then came stillness, not peace, but separation. The ark was afloat. The earth was gone. Noah opened a small window and looked out. All he could see was water. Endless, grey, merciless water. Tears filled his eyes, but he did not speak, for he knew this was not cruelty. This was cleansing. The world that had forgotten God was being reborn in water, just as one day souls would be reborn through baptism. The divine paradox. It is a mystery beyond human measure, that the same water which destroys also purifies. The same flood that swallowed sin also saved the righteous. In that paradox lies the heart of the gospel yet to come. The judgment and mercy are not opposites, but reflections of the same divine love. For when the flood rose, it was not the anger of a cruel God, it was the grief of a holy one. Heaven was not laughing, heaven was mourning. And as lightning split the sky, the ark glowed faintly in the distance, a single vessel of hope floating upon the tears of God. The endless night. For 40 days and nights, rain fell without rest. The sound became eternal, a rhythm of wrath and lament. Inside, Noah counted the days by candlelight. He spoke softly to his sons, telling them stories of Eden, of Adam and Eve, of how once the earth had been a garden of light. But now, all that remained was the sound of rain upon the roof of mercy. The animals, once restless, grew quiet, as though even they understood that this was no ordinary storm. It was a baptism of the world. Outside, every hill, every city, every tower was gone. The stars disappeared. The moon vanished. It was as though creation had returned to its first darkness, waiting once more for the word, "Let there be light." Noah's prayer. In the center of that vast sea, Noah knelt by the lantern's glow. His voice trembled as he prayed, "O Lord of heaven and earth, you who form and unform, I do not question your justice. But I ask you, remember mercy. Remember those who perish, for they were once your children. And when this storm is over, may the earth learn to walk with you again." His words rose through the storm, carried by the wind to the heart of God. And though the rain did not stop, heaven heard him. For in every storm that God allows, there is already a rainbow waiting, unseen but certain. The covenant in shadow. As the ark drifted under the wrath of waters, it became more than a refuge. It became a womb of new creation. Within its wooden walls, the seeds of the new world slept, beasts, birds, and the remnant of humanity. In its silence, God was already preparing a covenant that would stretch to the end of time. For the ark was a promise in motion, a prophecy floating on judgment's tide. It whispered of a day when another wooden vessel would lift humanity again, not from water, but from death. A cross raised high upon which the flood of sin would finally be stilled. The last drop. After 40 days, the rain stopped. The clouds broke apart like torn curtains, revealing light for the first time in weeks. The surface of the water shimmered like molten glass. The ark drifted in silence, surrounded by endless reflection, as if heaven and earth had merged into one sea of remembrance. Noah looked out, his face lined with awe and sorrow. He had lived to see the end of a world and the beginning of another. 40 days and nights of uncreation. The storm did not cease. For 40 days and nights the heavens wept, and the deep groaned beneath. The world that once danced in sunlight was gone, drowned beneath layers of memory and regret. It was not merely a flood, it was uncreation. The undoing of what had been spoken into being, the rhythm of "let there be" had reversed into silence, the world without form. The wind howled across an endless sea. There were no landmarks, no borders, no sound of living creatures, only the pulse of waves and the cry of the storm. The mountains once proud were buried. The forests once alive with song now slept beneath the tide. The cities of men, filled with pride and laughter, were erased as if they had never been. And yet, amid that cosmic desolation, a single wooden vessel drifted. The Ark, a small defiance of hope against the infinite grey. Inside, Noah watched the waters through the narrow window. He could not see land, but he could feel the hand of God guiding the waves. The Ark did not move by sails or oars, it moved by providence. Each gust of wind was a whisper, each wave a breath of divine intention. The silence inside. Within the Ark, time lost its meaning. The days blended into one another, rain, wind, and prayer. Noah's sons tended to the animals. The women whispered hymns into the dark. Each candle that burned became a star in their small, floating universe. Sometimes, the thunder outside seemed to answer Noah's prayers, as if heaven itself were weeping along with him. He thought of the world that had been, the laughter of children, the smell of the earth after rain, the songs of men who had once called upon the name of God. Now, only echoes remained. And yet, in that deep silence, a new truth began to form within him. That faith is not born in light, but in darkness. It is not proven on the mountain, but in the flood. Theologians would later call it the Great Undoing, the moment when God unspoke creation to wash away its corruption. Light was separated from darkness once more, but this time darkness was allowed to reign, not forever, but long enough for the soul to remember its dependence. Every storm, every flood, every sorrow that humanity would later face would echo this same mystery. That destruction in the hands of the Creator is never the end, only a doorway to transformation. For death and rebirth are the twin pillars upon which divine mercy stands. The waters that destroyed the old world were the same waters that birthed a new one. The flood was both judgment and baptism, the washing away of sin and the promise of a purer dawn. Noah's vision. On the 20th night, when the rain still fell and the ark creaked under heaven's weight, Noah fell into a restless dream. He stood upon a vast plain. The waters had vanished. Before him was a single tree, its roots sunk deep into shining soil, and from its branches hung both fruit and fire. A voice spoke, not from the tree, but from within his own heart. The world must die so that it may live again. You, Noah, are not a survivor, you are a seed. From your obedience shall grow the roots of covenant, and one day, upon another tree, the final ark shall be lifted, not to save from water, but from death itself. Noah awoke, trembling, the words echoing within him like thunder. He could not fully grasp their meaning, but he knew they were true. The ark and the cross. As the ark drifted through the endless sea, it became a living prophecy. Each beam of wood was a foreshadow of another wood, one that would bear not animals, but the burden of all sin. Each pitch-sealed crack was a symbol of grace, holding back the flood of divine wrath that the world deserved. Just as the ark carried Noah through the waters of uncreation, so too would another vessel, the cross of Christ, carry humanity through the flood of eternal death. The parallels were not accidental. They were divinely scripted, woven into the very DNA of salvation history. The long night days turned to weeks. The flood showed no mercy, yet the ark endured. The sound of the rain became like a heartbeat, steady, ceaseless, ancient. Inside, food was scarce, but faith was not. Noah's wife sang lullabies to calm the children. The lions slept beside the lambs, their instincts subdued by an unseen peace. Perhaps for the first time since Eden, the world inside the ark was truly at harmony, a glimpse of the kingdom that was yet to come. The flood had silenced human pride, but it had awakened something deeper, a longing for God's face. The breath of the Spirit. On the 40th night, the rain ceased, the thunder faded, a heavy stillness spread across the sea. Then came a wind, gentle, pure, sacred. It moved across the waters like a breath, and the surface began to ripple with light. It was the same spirit that had hovered over the waters at the dawn of creation. The same presence that had once spoken light into the void. Now it whispered rebirth. Behold, I make all things new. The flood was over, not yet in sight, but in decree. God had remembered Noah, and when God remembers, it is not memory, it is movement. The plan of redemption was already unfolding, the dawn after the darkness. For the first time in 40 days, the clouds broke apart. Sunlight pierced through the grey, touching the ark with golden fire. The waters still stretched endless, but within that light was the promise that the worst had passed. Noah stepped to the window, eyes filled with tears. Not tears of sorrow, but awe. He had seen the world die, and yet he believed it would live again. Faith, like the ark, was still afloat. And somewhere within the divine silence, God was already preparing the next word. Go forth. Part-shaped, the dove and the rainbow, signs of covenant. The rain had ceased, the thunder no longer spoke. What remained was a stillness unlike any Noah had known, a silence that seemed to stretch between heaven and the sea. The ark floated gently upon the calm waters, rocking as if in a cradle. Every creature within it had grown quiet. The storm had ended, but the waiting had only begun. In the world after the flood. Outside, all was changed. The horizon was nothing but shimmering blue and silver. No trees, no mountains, no trace of what had been. The earth was newborn, its scars hidden beneath the gentle waves. Noah gazed from the small window, his heart heavy with both awe and longing. He whispered to himself, "The world is reborn, but where shall we begin?" For even salvation must learn to stand again upon the ruins of what was lost. The first sending days passed. The ark drifted aimlessly, guided by the unseen hand of God. Then one morning, when the air grew softer and the wind smelled of land, Noah reached into the small cage beside him. He took a raven, dark, restless, untamed, and released it into the sky. The bird flew in circles above the ark, its wings glistening like onyx against the light. But it did not return. It found rest upon the floating carcasses of the world that once was, a creature of the old, not the new. Noah watched it disappear into the clouds and felt a shadow cross his soul. Even in a renewed world, some hearts still cling to death. The dove 7 days later, Noah tried again. This time he opened the palm of his hand and a white dove stepped forward. It blinked at him, gentle, pure, unafraid. He whispered, "Go, little one. Seek what is living." The dove flew into the open sky, its wings flashing with light. Hours passed. The family watched, waiting, praying. When the dove returned, it carried in its beak a small olive leaf, green, fragile, glistening with dew. Noah held it in trembling hands. It was not merely a leaf, it was a message. That somewhere beyond the sea, the earth had begun to breathe again. The second sending 7 more days passed. Noah sent the dove out once more. This time it did not return. The ark was no longer needed. The world was ready to receive its children. Noah fell to his knees and wept, not tears of sorrow, but of release. The flood had done its work. Judgment had finished speaking. Now grace began its song. The door opens. At the appointed time, God spoke to Noah again, not with thunder, but with peace. "Go forth from the ark, you and your family, and every living creature with you. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth once more." The door, sealed by divine hand, opened at last. Sunlight poured inside like liquid gold. Every living being stirred. Lions blinked, birds sang, lambs leaped for joy. The ark's shadow touched dry ground, and the smell of soil rose like incense. Noah stepped out, and fell to the earth, pressing his face to the ground. He did not speak. His tears became prayer enough. The first altar upon a small hill, Noah built the first altar of the new world. Stones from the shore, branches from the driftwood, fire kindled from the last spark within the ark. He offered burnt offerings, not to repay, not to appease, but to thank. Smoke rose to the heavens, twisting like a silver ribbon through the clear sky. And God looked upon Noah's offering and was pleased. Then he spoke again, not to Noah alone, but to all creation. Never again will I curse the ground because of man, though the thoughts of his heart are evil from youth. Never again will I destroy all living things as I have done. The rainbow. And then the first rainbow appeared. It was not drawn by light, but by covenant. Its colors arched across the sky like a bridge between heaven and earth. Each hue was a word of promise. Red for mercy, orange for endurance, yellow for joy, green for life, blue for peace, violet for mystery. It was God's signature upon the skies, a promise sealed in light. This is the sign of my covenant with you, said the Lord. When the bow appears in the clouds, I will remember my promise, that the waters shall never again cover the earth. Noah watched, tears gleaming in his eyes. The same sky that once rained destruction now painted hope, the hidden mystery. But the rainbow held a deeper secret, one that Noah could not yet see. For just as the ark prefigured the cross, the rainbow foreshadowed grace in full color, the mercy that would later shine through the wounds of Christ. Each color was a reflection of the light that would one day pierce the tomb, each curve a symbol of reconciliation between God and man. The flood had been a baptism, the rainbow was the benediction, and the dove, that gentle messenger, would return again in the Gospels, descending not upon a wooden ship, but upon the Son of Man at the Jordan, when heaven once more opened and said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." The quiet covenant. That night, as the stars returned to their rightful places, Noah sat beside the fading fire of his altar. The rainbow had vanished, but its reflection lingered in his heart. He looked at his family, the remnant of mankind, and smiled faintly. The earth was reborn, but so too was faith. In the soft wind, he heard again the whisper that had carried him through the storm. Mercy remembers. And so the ark rested, its mission complete, its wood now silent, but its meaning eternal. Part 9. The new beginning, altar and fire. The waters had withdrawn. The mountains, once hidden beneath the flood, stood revealed like ancient sentinels. Rivers carved new paths through the valleys, and sunlight danced upon the surface of a newborn world. The air was pure, washed of corruption, heavy with promise. Every sound was new again, the whisper of wind through leaves, the cry of an eagle reborn to the sky, the heartbeat of the earth beneath Noah's feet. The world had been baptized. Noah and his family stepped out of the ark in silence. Each footstep upon the soil echoed like a sacred vow. They were not just survivors. They were the first pilgrims of a new creation. Behind them, the ark rested upon the slopes of Mount Ararat, its hull weathered, its mission complete. It would remain there forever, a monument of both judgment and grace, a silent testament to the covenant between heaven and earth. Shem, Ham, and Japheth gazed around them in awe. For the first time they saw the world as Adam might have seen it, untouched, unstained, unmarred by man's rebellion. Noah whispered, "We are the first to walk upon God's promise." As evening fell, Noah gathered stones from the riverside. He built an altar upon a hill overlooking the plain, the first altar of the new world. There were no temples, no priests, no chants, only gratitude. He took from the clean animals, those preserved for this purpose, and offered them to the Lord upon the altar. Fire rose, not wild, but holy. Smoke curled upward like a bridge between worlds, and heaven breathed in the fragrance of faith. And the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma, says the scripture, and he said in his heart, "Never again will I curse the ground because of man." At that moment, mercy conquered wrath, justice gave way to grace. The fire that burned on Noah's altar was not just the symbol of offering, it was the first flame of covenant, the light that would one day lead to Sinai and later to Calvary. From the heavens came a voice, calm, vast, alive with creation's memory. Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it. The fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth and upon every bird of the heavens. It was the same command once spoken to Adam, but now it carried a shadow of wisdom born from the memory of judgment. Man was still given dominion, but this time he would walk humbly beneath the rainbow. The covenant of life had begun anew. Noah stood not as the father of a family, but as the father of a renewed humanity, a bridge between two worlds, the one drowned and the one reborn, the sacred fire. As night deepened, the fire on the altar glowed brighter. It was not merely light, it was presence. Noah sat beside it, watching the flames dance like living tongues. Each spark rose skyward, vanishing into the darkness as if returning to its creator. He realized that the same God who had sent the flood was now sending fire, not to destroy, but to sanctify. Water had washed away sin. Fire would keep the heart of man burning with remembrance. The two elements, water and fire, would forever mark the rhythm of divine redemption. In baptism, man would die to sin. In the Spirit's fire, he would live again. God spoke once more to Noah, his words resonating like the deep hum of creation itself. Behold, I establish my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you. Never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. I have set my bow in the cloud as a sign between me and the world. The sky above flickered with faint light, and for a moment Noah saw beyond the rainbow, beyond time. He saw another covenant yet to come, a figure upon a cross, arms stretched wide like the bow in the heavens, blood and water flowing as new creation's rivers. The rainbow and the cross, two arcs of the same love. Days passed, and life began to stir once more. Green shoots broke through the soil, birds nested among the rocks, rivers shimmered with fish. Even the wind carried laughter again. The sons of Noah began to plant seeds, their hands trembling with both hope and memory. Each seed buried in the ground was a silent act of faith, a belief that even after destruction, God still writes life into the soil. At night, Noah watched the stars and whispered prayers of thanks. He was old, but peace clothed him like dawn. He had seen death, but now he beheld resurrection. Yet even in this new world, the shadow of the old still lingered. For sin had not been drowned, only cleansed. Its memory still slept within the heart of man. Noah knew that the ark had saved their bodies, but not their souls entirely. Another flood would one day come, not of water but of grace and spirit, to wash mankind once more, forever. He looked into the fire, and for a moment saw the reflection of that greater ark, the cross, rising not upon waves, but upon a hill. At dawn, Noah's family gathered around the altar. The sun rose in gold and scarlet hues, reflecting upon the ark's wooden frame one last time. Together they sang, a hymn not of sorrow, but of rebirth. The waters have passed, the light has returned. He remembers mercy, his love endures forever. And so, from the mountain of Ararat, the second creation began, not with a command from heaven, but with a song from earth. Mount X, the hidden mystery, the ark as the shadow of Christ. In every sacred story there is a veil. Behind every veil a mystery waits, not of the past, but of eternity. The story of Noah is not only about judgment and survival. It is the echo of a deeper truth, a prophecy written in wood and water, a shadow cast by the coming of Christ. The ark was not just a vessel, it was a living parable, a divine mirror reflecting the heart of redemption yet to unfold. 1. The ark, the body of salvation. In the beginning, God commanded Noah to build the ark from gopher wood, a material both humble and enduring. Every plank, every joint, every seal of pitch was marked by divine instruction. "Make it according to all that I command you," said the Lord. Noah obeyed. He did not invent the ark, he received it, just as salvation is never built by man, but revealed by God. The ark was the only way through the waters of death. Outside it, there was destruction. Inside it, there was life. In that, the ark becomes the figure of Christ himself. He too was fashioned by divine will, covered not in pitch, but in blood, and within him all who enter by faith shall live. "I am the door," said Jesus. "If anyone enters by me, he will be saved." The ark had one door, one entry into mercy, and once it was closed by God's own hand, no storm could touch those within. So too the cross, the door that once opened never closes again. 2. The waters, judgment and baptism. The flood was not chaos, it was baptism writ large upon the earth. The old world perished beneath its waves, but from its depths a new creation arose. In this, the waters became both grave and womb, destroying sin, birthing holiness. The Apostle Peter would one day declare, "The flood symbolizes baptism, which now saves you also. Not the removal of dirt from the body, but the pledge of a clear conscience toward God." 1 Peter 3:21. The flood, then, was not God's rage. It was his mercy clothed in power. For through it, he began again. And so, when the waters of baptism flow over a believer, the flood of Noah whispers still, "You are buried with him in death, and raised with him to life." 3. The dove and the olive branch, the spirit of peace. As the ark drifted upon the endless sea, Noah released a dove. It returned with an olive leaf, the first sign of peace between heaven and earth. That dove was not merely a bird. It was the foreshadowing of the Holy Spirit, the same Spirit who would one day descend upon Jesus as he rose from the waters of the Jordan. The olive branch was more than a leaf. It was a token of reconciliation, a quiet whisper that wrath had passed and grace had begun. And when the Spirit descended upon Christ, it was as though the dove of Noah had finally found its eternal resting place, not upon wood, but upon the Son of God. 4. The Ark. Resting on Ararat, the shadow of resurrection. When the waters receded, the Ark came to rest upon the mountains of Ararat. After judgment, rest. After death, resurrection. Ararat became the first mountain of grace, a place where mercy touched earth again. The Ark's resting was not the end of the story. It was the Sabbath of creation, reborn. For even the cross, the greater Ark, would one day rest upon the hill of Calvary. And when the tomb lay empty, the world knew once again the flood had ended and dawn had begun. 5. The rainbow, the crown of the covenant. Then came the rainbow, God's bow set in the clouds. Its arc stretched from horizon to horizon, binding heaven and earth in color and light. It was a symbol of peace, but more than that, it was a reflection of divine mercy after sacrifice. Each color was like a word from God, red for blood, blue for heaven, gold for eternity. It bent downward, as though heaven itself was bowing toward man. And centuries later, on another hill under a darkened sky, another bow would appear, not of light, but of wood. And from it hung the Lamb who sealed every promise. The rainbow was the first covenant sign, the cross the final. One was painted in the sky, the other written in blood. 6. The new covenant, from Noah to Christ. Noah was the bridge between two worlds. Christ is the bridge between heaven and earth. Noah's Ark carried 8 souls to safety, symbolic of new creation, for the number 8 means beginning again. So too, Christ rose on the 8th day, the day beyond the Sabbath, the eternal dawn. The flood had washed the world, but it could not cleanse the heart. Only the blood of Christ could reach that deep. Noah built an altar with stones. Christ built one with his body. Noah's fire rose to heaven. Christ's fire descended from it. The covenant of rainbow became the covenant of redemption. 7. The eternal ark. In every age, the ark sails again, not through waters of judgment, but through the storms of time. Its name is the church, the vessel of Christ, as body upon the seas of the world. And just as the ark bore life through the flood, the church bears souls through the tides of history. Outside it, there is chaos. Within it, the covenant of peace. And the dove, the Spirit, still hovers above her, seeking hearts to rest upon. 8. The final horizon. Noah's story does not end with the drying of the earth. It lives on in every baptism, in every rainbow after a storm, in every heart that dares to believe that mercy triumphs over wrath. The ark, the flood, the rainbow, they are not relics of an ancient myth. They are the language of redemption, God's poetry written upon the history of man. And when the final storm of the world comes, the true ark, Christ himself, will open his door once more. Those who enter shall find rest, not upon a mountain, but in the everlasting kingdom, where no water, no darkness, no death shall ever rise again. Thank you for watching. See you again on next video.
Subscribe now to watch more videos about mystery.